Very pleased to welcome Homestart Wigtownshire, and then Homestart Cymru and Children in Wales are going to present, and then we will have a chance after the presentations to have a discussion around what we've heard, questions, and yeah, a time for reflection. We are recording the session as we always do so that we can put it up on the video library. It will only be the presentations themselves that are shared, and any resources and things that are discussed we will add to the video so that you can come back and pick them up. I think that's all the housekeeping, etc., Vicky. In which case I will hand over to you. Thank you.
Thanks, Alex. Just before I start, though, I just want to sort of setting the scene a little bit. So good morning, everyone, and thank you so much for sparing your time and joining us today, and also your interest in children's rights. So as Alex said, we have like three inputs today with some Q&A time at the end. I just want to say that we recognize that each of the four nations may be at quite a different point in its journey towards embedding children's rights, especially in policy and legislation. Although our presentation, our inputs today come from Scotland and Wales, our focus is not really about the legal side of it or legal responsibilities. Our kind of purpose is very much about strengthening our practice, championing children's rights, and also think about how we can empower parents, carers to help uphold those rights for their babies and children wherever they live. So I hope you will find it interesting, relevant, and inspiring. So no matter whether like which nations you're actually based in. So I'll start with my presentation. So I just want to tell you about the UNCRC Skills and Knowledge Framework that was developed or published actually not long ago. And let me just click the next slide. If you are new to these, new to UNCRC, at Homestart, we strive to ensure that every child grows up healthy, happy, and safe. We want them to have a positive childhood. We also believe that their voices, especially those of our youngest children, babies, toddlers, they must be heard and valued. And that's why we actively champion the voice of infants. In the previous workshops, we talk about holding babies in mind, how we can embed that into our work. And the UNCRC, the United Nations Convention on the Rights of the Child, is exactly about that. Excuse me. It reflects our vision, and it outlines what children need to thrive and reinforces the importance of listening to their views when decisions are made about them or decisions that affect their lives. So the UNCRC was drafted in 1989, and it's the most widely ratified human rights treaty in history. As of last year, 196 countries have signed up to it, including the UK, which we did in December 1991. So it's not something new. It's been around for some time. And each child and young person has 42 substantive rights under the UNCRC. And these rights come from the articles. So you can see on the posters on the slide. These are the articles, which are specific sections of the UNCRC. If you want to know more about the UNCRC, we have produced a short video as an intro. So I have included the link in at the end of this presentation. If you want to watch it yourself or show it to your volunteers with your team, please feel free to do so. Okay, just a little bit about the framework. So last year, Scotland incorporated the UNCRC into their domestic law. So it's part of the legal requirement that public bodies and third sector organizations have to implement the UNCRC. So the frameworks is actually developed to support them in terms of the implementation. And the government commissioned two charities. So one's called Together Scotland and the other one's Children's Parliament to develop these. So again, the intention was actually for public bodies and third sector organizations who have the legal duties under that legislation. But the wider visions actually apply to Homestart. So the framework has been designed to support the adoption of a children's rights approach. improve and consolidate our understanding of the UNCRC and increase our confidence in terms of implementing it. It sets out the skills and knowledge, what we need to know, what we need to do if we want to like grow our rights practice. It's also got lots of useful resources if we want to learn. We can use that to do it on our own. It also enable culture change as well. So it actually can be used by anybody who works with children and young people, families, or whoever's got the passion to uphold children's rights. This is actually for them too. So it's not, it's not limited to certain purpose. So within the framework, it describes the human rights approach based on 5 principles. So it's divided into 5 key areas, if you like. So embedding, it talks about what we need to do, what we need to know in order to embed children's rights in our services, in our strategies. Talk about equality, so how we address discrimination, promote equity and equality, no matter where the child's actually come from, what kind of background she comes from, or identity that they have. We talk about empowerment, so it's support children, babies, toddlers to claim their rights, to be the rights holders. But we also talk about, it also talk about supporting parents, empower them to be the children's allies when it comes to children's rights. And participation, it talks about involving children in decisions. So it includes babies, again, infants as well. When they don't have that any verbal skills, we might have to involve them in different ways than just like a normal consultation or traditional consultation, if you like. So we need to think about any kind of creative methods to do that, but it has to be meaningful as well. So in the framework, it explains like what can we do in order to achieve that. Accountability, so it talks about transparency, remedies, communication. So it talks about children must understand decisions made about them. So how do we actually feed back to them? So this is the decision made and this is the rationale behind it. So again, it might require different communication methods in order to achieve that. Clear routes for complaints. There needs to be a way for children to actually give the feedback. So when their rights are not being upheld, who they can actually tell, who can they actually hold accountable. And so the framework's actually divided it into 3 levels of learning. It emphasized the progressive approach, so people can actually accumulate their learning on an improvement journey. So informed is the foundation level for everybody in the workforce. That includes maybe our volunteers and people who really want to learn about that. Skilled level is for those who are working directly with children. Again, that would apply to our home starts. And then enhance is more steering towards leadership and strategic roles. So this tiered approach ensures everyone has a role in embedding children's rights. So it's not just about people in the front line delivering services. It needs support from the managers. It needs support from the organization as well. So what that actually looks like is this. So within the framework, you will have sections like these. So on the top, you will see the principles. So this one is about equality and non-discrimination. And then on the right-hand side, you can see the level. So that's informed level for this one. So when you go through these, you can see like what kind of learning outcomes, what I want to achieve in terms of this area, in terms of this principle. And then it will explain what you need to know and then what you need to develop in terms of your skill sets. And you can see some quotes throughout the documents as well, throughout the framework. It's because the framework is actually developed alongside families and children. They were part of this development, and you can see kind of their voices throughout. So both from the family side, but also from professional side as well. That's a big group of professionals from different kind of like sectors influence and help shape this framework. And I have to say as well, I think the principles also actually based from the work in Wales. So you might find the principles familiar in certain ways. So in this example, you can see like if you might want to learn about like how to support children whose rights are at risk, that might include babies, infants, to have equal access to their rights. So you have to understand they might have different communication needs, and you need to build up skills to accommodate these needs in your everyday practice. So when you go further, so once you've completed the informed level, when you go further to the skill level, you might want to understand a bit more about the impact of discrimination, for example. And in terms of the skills, then you might want to develop skills to support parents, children to challenge any discriminatory practice. So you can see that could be accumulate along your improvement journey, your learning journey. So to support all of these, there's also a hub of resources alongside the framework. So the learning journal is one of them. I personally find it very useful because you can actually, it's very much like a self-assessment. You can like check it against yourself, like where you are, what are you already doing very well, and also identify gaps. So I would encourage you to use it alongside your supervision as well. So it could be part of your discussions with your line manager and thinking, well, I might want some training around this area that would kind of help me develop better practice in terms of like upholding children's rights. And within the learning library, you can see the link. Within that, you will have lots of resources that you can actually use to help with your learning. And then you can have like put down your evidence, and that could form part of your CPD plan throughout the year. So you don't have to do like every one of them at the same time, but you can actually like plan ahead yourself. You can also use it as a team as well. So if as a team you identify certain areas that you want to work together collectively, then you can do that. You can provide a bit of peer support with each other. Have to think about as an organizations, are we actually like doing enough, or do we have any good examples that we can put down as evidence that we can share with our colleagues within the organization? So that's a quick whistle stop of the framework, and that's the link to the framework, but that's also the link to the introduction video that I mentioned earlier on. Do feel free to have a look and explore it. I would like to hear any feedback once you've got a chance to look at it and to see whether you find it useful, you find it maybe that there is a gap for Homestart. Alex and I will welcome any feedback, and we can have a think ourselves, like in terms of our network. Can we do a bit more? What can we actually support you to do using that framework as well? So if you've got any questions, can I ask you to hold on to it for the moment? We can come back to, later at the end, or you can put it in the chat column if you feel that you're too shy to speak today. So that's me. I'll pass it back on to you, Alex.
Thank you, Vicky. I just keep thinking in my head how far behind we are in England, which is where I sit in the UK. Thank you. A really great introduction. So yes, please hold your questions and thoughts till we go to the Q&A, because we've got lots more to hear from others. We're now going to welcome Elaine from Homestart Wigtownshire. Welcome, who's going to talk about the work that they've been doing around children's rights. So Elaine, with no more further ado, thank you. Hand over to you.
Thank you. I'm not actually going to do the presentation. We have one already made up. Our manager, my colleague Sue's also online. Our manager, Claire McKee, has prepared a video. So I'm hopefully ready to share my screen, and we will be able to play this for you. Oh. It will take about 10 seconds for Claire to start the presentation. Hope you enjoy.
Thank you, Vicky, for asking us to deliver a short presentation on our involvement in the Tiny Rights Detective project, exploring pathways to justice for babies. I'm Claire McKee, the Senior Coordinator at Homestart Wigtownshire, I'm on holiday this week, but I've put together this presentation which will hopefully give you all a brief insight into our participation in the project. For those who are not familiar with Home Start Wigtownshire, we are the most southerly home start in Scotland on the western coast, directly across the Irish Sea from Northern Ireland. We're a small team of 8 part-time staff members and 27 volunteers, and we support just under 100 families spread across 467 square miles. So to give some background to our involvement, we were approached by Vicky via Home Start UK back in June 24. Home Start UK had been approached by Together, who were working on the State of Children's Rights in Scotland 24 report. Together we're seeking to understand the experiences of rights from babies and toddlers' perspective. Looking to run creative group sessions with babies, toddlers, parents and carers and staff to explore children's rights and child-friendly feedback processes. They were keen for participation from an organisation with a rural demographic. Others taking part were from more urban areas. So after a few conversations and background from Vicky and Jackie from Together, we agreed to sign up to take part in the pilot project. So it all began with the Rights Detective project. The Rights Detectives are children and young people who investigate and influence decisions that affect babies, children and young people's rights. A group of children and young people aged 11 to 17 work with Together to help shape the Human Rights Bill for Scotland, speaking to children and young people across Scotland and sharing their findings with the Scottish Government. They helped create a version of the consultation questions that were easier for children to understand, and their work helped make sure children's rights were reflected in the new law. Against this backdrop, Together then decided to launch a pilot project to expand the Rights Detective programme to include babies, young children and their grown-ups, and the Tiny Rights Detective project was born. So the aim of the project was to capture the experiences of families from diverse backgrounds, including those living in rural areas, young parents, families on low incomes and families whose first language isn't English. The project aim was to identify both common barriers and the specific challenges faced by different groups in realising babies' rights. And while the project initially focused on exploring complaints mechanisms for babies, it quickly evolved to identify broader justice pathways for babies, young children and their families. So initially our involvement began with strategic group meetings involving senior staff from all participating organisations, including myself and Vicky. We had several of these meetings over the course of a few months and they provided oversight and direction for the pilot. Alongside these were several operational steering group meetings involving staff who would be directly working with the families, including Sue, who's on the call today. Sue's one of our family group workers and Sue and her volunteer helped facilitate these sessions along with staff from Together. Other organisations who took part were Craig Miller Literacy Trust from Edinburgh, Play Scotland and the Scottish Borders and Star Catchers in Fife. And Parenting Across Scotland, Home Start UK and Lickety Spit also offered advice and guidance during the pilot project. So it was agreed that the investigative sessions would take place across 4 locations around Scotland. Initially 2 of the senior rights detectives were planning to come down to Wigtownshire with staff from Together Scotland to take part in a rural session, but unfortunately the visits clashed with their school timetables. However, they were able to attend some of the other sessions to support the investigations. Our chosen location for the sessions was Sorby Village Hall, which you see in the picture here, where we run one of our weekly Tweenies family groups. Families were asked if they were happy to take part and they all agreed. We chose a familiar setting so that babies, toddlers and parents taking part felt comfortable in their surroundings and they were supported by staff and volunteers that they saw regularly. So the sessions were designed to be relationship based and lasted up to 2 hours, which is the normal time for our family group sessions. We wanted to keep everything as familiar as possible for the families taking part. Some of the activities included rhyme, song, music and movement, sensory play and activities which the baby, parent and carer could take part in together. And we also included arts and messy play, shared food times alongside group and individual discussions. So 7 babies aged 8 months to 3 years and 6 parents took part, with the same families attending both sessions. The data was gathered through various methods by staff from Together over the course of 2 separate sessions, using direct observations of babies and families and voice recorders from participants and staff. We also provided an anonymous partner survey. So why does the project matter? With UNCRC becoming law in Scotland in July 24, it means that babies and young children now have legally enforceable rights. Public services must put children's right at the heart of everything that they do, and families should have clear ways to challenge when their babies' rights are not being met. So we know that the current complaint systems don't work for babies. Babies can't write letters or fill out forms when their rights aren't met, and families often don't know where to turn when things go wrong. And services don't always listen to what babies are telling them through their actions and behaviours. The project set out to change that by finding new ways for babies to be heard and for their rights to be respected. So what did Together discover during the project? Babies know what they want, but adults don't always listen. Babies show their rights through their actions. For example, choosing what toys or snacks they want is their right to participation, which is Article 12 of the Act. Showing that they need a rest when they are tired is their right to rest, which is Article 31. And reacting differently to friendly or scary places is their right to safety, Article 19. Some of the project's other findings included babies face real barriers in everyday life. Families told us that simple things make life harder for babies, like not enough parent and child parking spaces, buses that don't fit prams, which can mean families are unable to get out and about, broken glass in play areas making them feel unsafe, housing problems like cold, damp homes that affect babies' health, and one parent with a baby told us that they had to choose between heating and hot water for 6 months. Together also found that even when families wanted to raise concerns, they didn't always know how. Some parents said they felt doctors ignored them when they knew something was wrong with their baby. Others said they had to get upset or cry before they felt they were being taken seriously. And many said they didn't feel confident in speaking up. And one young mum said she felt silenced by the medical profession. So Together's summary of what needs to change. Complaint systems don't work for babies. Right now, most complaint systems involve writing things down or filling out forms. This doesn't work for babies. Instead, we need staff who understand babies' signals and responds to their needs. A way for families to raise concerns early before things become worse, and stronger relationships between families and the services that support them. Parents and caregivers need support to understand babies' rights. When parents learn about babies' rights, they feel more confident speaking up. We need better information to help parents recognise rights violations, and professionals need more training on how to listen to the voices of children and families. And they also looked at system change, not just individuals. Transport, housing and public spaces all need to be designed with babies in mind, and decision makers need to consider babies' rights in every policy that they make. So what's next? The project showed that babies' rights matter and that collectively we need to make sure their voices are heard. Together are now trying to get funding to create tools and resources to help organisations like ours better understand and support babies' rights. They're going to build a tiny rights champion network to help more people learn about babies' rights, help families and organisations speak up about problems like unsafe play areas or not getting the health care that they need, and share what they've learned with people who make decisions so that they can make things better for babies and young children. So after the project was finished, we asked the parents for some feedback on how they felt taking part in the pilot, and this is what they told us. The 2 ladies from Together came in and joined in with our group, so it didn't feel intrusive in any way. They spent a while getting to know us and our children before asking any questions around children's rights. Another parent said, I knew children had rights, but wasn't aware of how neglected their social and physical needs are living in Dumfries and Gallow area, with limited access to public transport and access to larger hospitals and groups. I was aware of babies and children's rights to be free from harm and to have their needs met, to be included, but it was interesting to understand and think about how society wasn't helping meet these needs for babies and children who live rurally. And taking part in the project has made me fight harder for the rights of my children and that I should be their voice. So some of the key takeaways from taking part in the project. We felt that parents welcomed the conversation. Most parents had never heard of babies' rights before, but they were open and curious and they engaged really well with the sessions. Rights-based language needs translation. Formal language, for example, Article 7, it can feel distant or confusing. By using plain, relatable terms like your baby has the right to feel safe and loved, that worked much better. Start with what parents already do well. By linking babies' rights to everyday care, like cuddling, responding to their cries, playing with them, it made rights feel much more natural and not an added pressure for parents. And by recognising parents' strengths, it helped build their confidence and trust. And conversation works best through the relationship, so we definitely made the right decision as a collective to hold rights-based discussions in familiar, trusted settings like our family groups. There was a much greater impact felt from all who took part. And we felt we were really well placed to pilot this work because of our close local connections with families. It made it easier for us to explore rights in a real life setting. And the need for tools and training. By discussing rights-based approaches locally, it helped us to learn what fits in our area. We also recognised that more support is needed to build confidence in talking about babies and children's rights in our everyday work, and that we need to support our staff and volunteer teams to adapt approaches sensitively. So that's the end of the presentation. I've attached a link to the full Exploring Pathways to Justice for Babies report, and hopefully Vicky will also be able to add it into the chat today. Thank you for taking time to hear about the project. I hope it's been interesting and encouraged you all to start thinking more about babies and children's rights in our work. It certainly has in our workplace. Sue's on the call today if anyone would like to ask her any questions about the investigation sessions that we took place, and she'll be able to tell you a bit more about what actually happened in the group settings. So hope you all had a lovely summer and that this glorious weather continues. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. What a brilliant presentation. So much to think about. Sue, you're on the call, and I don't want to put you on the spot, but I probably am right now. I'm just noticing the time that we're slightly ahead, so I'm wondering actually if people did have any particular questions to put to you, Sue or Elaine. I mean, we could maybe do about 10 minutes. Would that be all right, Vicky? Because we're a little bit, yeah, and sometimes it feels wrong to kind of leave all those questions till after. Sue, I wonder if I could just kick off and ask you kind of how all of that felt for you as being the person in the room on that project.
It was a really good project, and I think one of the things I took away was how little the rights are emphasised for children that aren't even in the school setting yet. It's something that schools are very focused on. Sorry, my children are in the background. Hang on a second. You need to go out the room, girls, please. Hang on a second. Sorry.
It's fine. That's what I love about Homestart. We're all very comfortable with that, aren't we? We can just wait until the chaos has been resolved. Oh, hello. And we've got some people to say hello to.
And apparently they're hungry, which is just really not good timing. I am so sorry. I'm going to leave the room. It's okay. I'm leaving the room.
Okay.
Right. No, I think the main thing was it was lovely to bring that issue to such young families, young children, and yeah, they were so on board with everything. I think they appreciated the opportunity to talk about their concerns, and I certainly learned a lot about the limitations of our local area, particularly for those that don't have the luxury of a car. That was quite interesting, something that I personally hadn't experienced. So it's helped me have a lot more empathy for their struggles, so helped me understand their difficulties better. I'm rambling slightly distracted from my crazy children there. I'm now hiding away in my bedroom. I might just stay here all day, actually.
Sounds like a plan.
But yes, hopefully, did that answer your question?
Yeah, and I was thinking about in the presentation she talked about using the language
Yeah.
of children's rights and how that impacted parents to kind of that empowered them to consider, you know, where their baby's rights are possible, like that you talked about the transport,
Yeah. I guess
how that felt.
they simplified the language, and that helped the parents identify what their children's rights actually were, and then they were able to engage and understand that there were issues maybe they hadn't realised, that the child had the rights to certain things. So that language can be quite overwhelming, and I felt it was a really good project, and the ladies were really hands-on, and they adapted their approach to the needs of the parents, who didn't really like so much talking in a big group because they had quite personal feelings and issues. So we were able to encourage one-to-one conversations more so. So no, it was really good. I think they all felt that they were heard and understood, which is great. So
Thank you. I think Vicky's got maybe a question for you.
oh gosh, I'm
Not
so
so
glad
much a
I'm hiding away.
question. Don't worry about it, Sue. I just want to share some feedback from the Together Scotland side
Okay.
as well, because I was part of the steering group. I think they, as a children's rights like champions organization, they also find this process very a learning process for them as well, even though that is the expertise, because they do find like a big gap for listening to babies and working alongside parents, and try how do you actually balance that views that you focus on like both of them, so not losing any sights like when you're engaging like the whole family. They learn about the relationship. That's the reason why they want to work with Homestart, is they know that it's very much relational. You've got that trust from the parents, you've got that groups going on, so they're not invading their space, but more coming in as a guest and listening to that. And they find it very much like inspiring as well in terms of the ongoing work. And they talk about language too, because I think initially they call the projects We Write Detectives. That's what I put it there in the column earlier on. But they changed it because I think the feedback from the location was like saying We Write, it's a little bit undermining. So it's not, their rights are not we. They just like mini babies. So they changed the title. So a lot of listening, learning from the end too. So they very much appreciate the opportunity to work with Homestart from that perspective. I just want to add it there.
Oh no, that's lovely. Yes, I hadn't heard that. That's really nice feedback. No, they were very engaging, very open to any suggestions, and no, they were great to work with. Yeah, I'm rambling again.
Does anyone else have any questions or thoughts from that presentation?
I see the cat.
Yeah, got the cat. I can't see any hands up. No. Okay, well, thank you so much, all the team
Thank you.
in Scotland. That was great, and maybe there'll be some more questions later on in the Q&A. So now we are going to move our focus to Wales, where we're going to hear from Anna at Children in Wales and Izzy at Homestart Cymru. So I will hand over to you. Thank you.
Thanks, Alex. Thanks, Vicky, for having us. It's great to be here. Bore da, good morning, everyone. My name's Izzy, Policy and Public Affairs Manager for Home Start Cymru, and I'm joined by Anna, Senior Policy Officer for Children in Wales. We've come here today to talk both about our respective work that we're doing to empower, communicate on children's rights, and also the work that we've been doing together and the value that's added for us. Before we actually kind of delve into our organisations and introducing the work that we're doing, we would just hopefully set some helpful context and the scene in Wales in terms of how children's rights are understood, empowered and enforced, both through kind of legislative ways and within organisations independently too. So for Wales, we have lots of strengths, and it's there's lots of different areas where both our Welsh Government and other kind of institutions have worked hard to understand children's rights and commit to the articles within the UNCRC. So some of those things include the children's rights that are enshrined into Welsh law under the Rights of Children and Young Persons Wales measure, and that places a duty on our ministers to have due regard to the UNCRC when developing or reviewing legislation and policy. There's also a duty within that to promote knowledge and understanding of the UNCRC to others, the public and organisations. And at the time, the measure was passed by what was then known as the National Assembly for Wales. We now know that to be the Senedd. And we were actually the first country in the UK to actually integrate the UNCRC into our domestic law. So that's something that we're definitely proud to say. Within that and under the commitments of the measure, there's involvement of use of CRIAs by ministers as well, so children's rights impact assessments. So there's an expectation for ministers to complete CRIAs in any kind of decision-making processes, legislative work and decision-making around policies to support how we understand the effects of those decisions on children. We also, so as well as kind of legislative commitments that Welsh Government have made, we also do have various kind of roles and institutions that function to support children's rights, to encourage, promote them. One of those things is our Welsh Youth Parliament, and what that does, it's basically a space for young people to learn about the Senedd, how it works, to engage with policymakers and to influence decisions and policies within Wales. So that's something that is a really great function that we have. We also have the Children's Commissioner for Wales, and her name is Rocio Fuentes. She has previous work in a lot of kind of anti-racism work, which is brilliant and kind of relates directly to some of the articles in the UNCRC as well. Her role is to tell people why children's rights are so important and look at how the decisions made by public bodies in Wales, including Welsh Government, could affect or have implications on children's rights as well. We also have the Future Generations Commissioner, Derek Walker, so that directly links to our Wellbeing of Future Generations Act that was introduced, I believe, in 2015. It sets a vision for the kind of environment and type of Wales that we want our future generations to live in. So his role specifically is to support and challenge Wales to make decisions in the best interests of people who aren't born yet, and very much obviously links to children's rights in that way, and making sure that we're shaping a future for our children that is the best that it could possibly be. We do also have, so in the last year, we have had a ministerial role that's fairly new to us. So the Minister for Children and Social Care explicitly names children in its title. And part of their responsibility includes children and young people's rights and entitlements. And then, of course, within that is the UNCRC. So that was a really good kind of progress area. Ideally, we'd like to have a dedicated Minister for Children and Young People, but that's something that lots of organisations were working on together to kind of platform. And as we run up to the next Senedd as well, there's opportunity there to influence. And then finally, there's a lot of work been put into, and Children in Wales have been behind this, really kind of pushing forward for material like this that Welsh Government have produced in the last few years around children's rights to improve understanding. And they're also really useful because they're actually categorised by age, and kind of thinking about for different ages of children, what do those rights look like and how are those articles better understood. So on the screen there is an example of the material for 0 to 12 months old, which is something that is a particular need, because obviously these days it's quite difficult to understand for those really young children, those babies and toddlers. How do we use that language to kind of explain children's rights that's applicable to those kind of ages? Those resources are really useful, so potentially possibly Anna can pop that link into the chat in case it's helpful for people, because I know we're all looking for resources that will help us in our thinking in this area. So although we have lots of kind of strength and kind of strong areas in Wales when it comes to children's rights, there are areas for progress that we have been kind of working together to call for. And those in particular seem to be the voices of babies and toddlers and those very young children. So given the fact that, you know, lots of the articles, you know, the right to having a voice and expressing opinions and things like that, a lot of the time when children aren't able to do that in words, it's hard for people to understand how else your very young children can be expressing their views, their needs. So in a lot of conversations, it means that babies and toddlers just aren't quite included in those conversations about the articles. And so it's really important for us to rethink that, even in our language, when we're talking about children, making sure that we're referring to babies, children and young people, and that we're really acknowledging babies as that separate kind of demographic that requires that, you know, unique approach. Consistency of practice is something as well. So both kind of organisationally, maybe different organisations will have different approaches to children's rights, but particularly within Welsh Government, obviously commitment to use of careers is important, but there's question marks around how often those careers are actually completed, and whether that's actually been sufficient thinking around policy decisions, and how those implications look for children's rights. And then for us, we have persistent challenges in Wales that really just act as an indicator of either rights not being fulfilled or a symptom of kind of the barriers for rights to being fulfilled as well. So poverty is a consistent issue for us, as many other nations are, but for us, child poverty has been consistently high. Around 30% of our children in Wales live in poverty. Joseph Rowntree did some recent predictions for Wales, and in around the next few years, by about 2029, if we don't do something significant and really kind of stick to our commitments for child poverty and addressing those issues, then child poverty is set to raise by around to up to 38%, which is a real concern and something that you know, us and other organisations are calling to really prevent and kind of halt. Poor mental health, more and more children at a younger age are being kind of recorded to be suffering from mental health issues. As we know, that's all kind of very much intrinsically linked to parental mental health as well, which has also been deteriorating since COVID, cost of living, and it just presents a whole new set of challenges for children these days. And then with those things, we see outcome disparities coming from that too. So child development is something that we see, those living in poverty and those not living in poverty, for example, and the children's ability to kind of reach key developmental milestones is an example there. So there's lots of work still to be done in Wales, and to be calling for kind of better practice that is really authentically children's rights led and inspired. So hopefully that's a bit of helpful kind of context setting for Wales and what kind of children's rights look like in our nation. We thought we would just kind of go a bit more deeper into our respective organisations and the work that we're doing, given those kind of areas for progress and what we know needs to be worked on, what we're doing respectively and also collaboratively together to really take those articles, make them their own, and empower them in our everyday. So in case it's helpful, in case a few people don't know in the room, so Home Start Cymru was formed in 2019. So that was as a result of a merger of, I believe it was 7 of the independent Home Starts in Wales. So we're coming up to, we've just had our 5-year anniversary. We currently operate in 18 of the 22 Welsh local authority areas. So we have really kind of an almost pan Wales spread. Obviously, as we know, and our kind of bread and butter for everyone in the room, we're there for parents when they need us most, because we know that childhood can't wait. So in addition to our core support that you all know, very well, we do have targeted projects that support particular issues or particular demographics in Wales. That includes housing and financial management, support, particularly in our Caerphilly area, support for families with neurodivergence in the family, so either children and parents that we see too, people seeking sanctuary, and then specific kind of branches for our peer support groups too. And last year we supported 1,417 families, and that included 2,532 children within that. So in terms of the children's rights-based approaches we take, for us, there's multiple strands to this. It's not just about our kind of service delivery and what we model, but it's also about our kind of strategic priority setting and the ways that we think and the ways that we work. So first and foremost, addressing those barriers that can be in place that prevent fulfilment of rights is quite important to us. So that can include, as you know, inequality and inequity, a lack of inequality of access to resources and things like that. We, as much as we can, we act as that advocate for the family. We're making sure that we're as vocal as we can be to kind of inject the insights and experiences of our families into various policy and more research spaces to be able to kind of expand thinking around how we break down those barriers for families in lots of ways. And obviously just kind of naturally through our support for parents and kind of breaking down parental challenges and providing support there, we are kind of feeding into that wider holistic whole family approach and making sure that we're acknowledging that integral link between parental and child wellbeing there too. We do our best to empower and inform families as well, so both on what the articles mean, what it means for them in the context of their lives, but also that includes being able to go and talk about the policies that affect them too. So a key example for us was in the last few years, we had an act introduced in Wales. That was the abolishment of defence of reasonable punishment for children. It meant that it made illegal any forms of physical punishment towards children that parents were inflicting. We did a lot of work with parents to explain that act to them and why it was important. Naturally, you've got lots of kind of generational behaviours, attitudes or beliefs that are passed down through families where for a lot of parents, maybe it was normalised for them to receive physical punishment for discipline. And because of those reasons, you know, they didn't quite understand what the significance of that could be. But being able to be in those homes and actually disseminate the act for them and understand in a very non-judgmental way and knowing what their background is, what this means for them and how to apply that to their own family as part of that wider kind of effort to protect children, provide those safe environments. For us as well, we're always thinking of creative methods that centre and empower the voices of children as well, particularly thinking about how we use those methods to empower the voices of very young children, so babies and toddlers, infants. For us, active observation is a real kind of key. So making sure that our staff and volunteers are equipped with the knowledge to be able to actively observe. So when a child is playing or communicating different things, sounds or feelings or emotions, that they're able to know what to do with those things to be able to relate to, okay, well, I know if the child is doing this, and that may relate to a particular need in this area. So our staff have kind of that learning that they're equipped with to be able to do that active observation. But then we also use things like props and toys and art for drawing and speaking, drawing and learning. We also use toys as kind of a conduit for feelings and emotions and colours and things like that. And just encourage our staff and volunteers to be creative, you know, with our guidance to be able to do that. And that can be, you know, really the key for engaging with really, really young children. In terms of strategically, we ourselves perform CRIAs in our decision-making processes to understand what are the implications of our decisions on children's and children's rights. Within that as well, we've also took in efforts to embed the NEST framework within our practices and ways of working. So the NEST framework, it's a framework that was designed by the Welsh Government, and essentially it functions to ensure a whole system approach to mental health services for families. And that includes babies, children and young people. It's underpinned by a rights-based approach, and the focus of that is a child development lens too. So we hosted a lot of internal workshops with our stakeholders, involved our families, our volunteers, to understand where we currently sit with these various areas of the framework and what we can do to set actions and commitments to review our progress and make sure that we're really empowering children's rights under the framework. And then constant learning to support evolution and our growth. So staff volunteer training and ongoing learning is really important to us. We have a robust kind of onboarding package, but then we provide ongoing opportunities for our volunteers to continuously learn about more specific areas. So we know that our volunteers have, you know, they're often parents themselves. They have a diversity of unique skills that they're able to share, and being able to kind of use those and utilise those as much as we can for the benefit of our families. So we're in the process of working on kind of a learning suite for our volunteers where they can go and learn in their own time about very specific kind of topics. Maybe they want to learn more about neurodivergence and kind of what that means, what the referral pathway usually is, so that they've got that kind of information on the surface to understand it themselves, but also to disseminate with families too. So that's really important to us. Our strong cross-sector relationships. So Children in Wales is a great example of a powerful relationship we have, and how valuable they are for us for shared learning, and to kind of share good practice. And then we're really committed to embedding and prioritising co-production in our work. So we're setting up more and more parent and family voice groups. We've got a volunteer advisory group that we lean on, and making sure that we're really kind of centering children as a lot of the focus of those conversations, that they're able to speak on behalf of their children, but also doing a lot of our own engagement with children as well. So the workshops that we can set up as kind of parent and child workshops, and that we have the right staff there to support an interactive session, is important to us too. So just to kind of, and I suppose this is more of an example of how we engage those younger children, and how we can really use those creative methods to implore, good engagement with young children. We had a great example shared by one of our staff members in Powys, Leon, that I thought I'd just really like to share with everyone, because when he shared it in the organisation, it was just brilliant to see. And we get examples of this every day in our internal networks, but I thought I'd love to share it all with you all in the room. So Leon shared a post on our internal channels. He said, "Several months ago, I was visiting a family with an amazing little girl with a mixture of emerging needs. Initially, she was very weary of a stranger being in her home. It took me a long time for her to acknowledge me. However, after meeting her favourite plush toy, we were able to talk about the adventures of Bubbles, the flying pig. It became a great way to communicate and get a pulse on how she was feeling. Mum also used Bubbles to promote hygiene and tidy her room. I closed the family and had to say goodbye to Bubbles, but before I left, with a bit of help from AI, Bubbles was brought to life in a short comic." So Leon's utilised AI to take that plush toy that the little girl has had and connected with so much throughout her process of having Homestart in the home, and created that kind of comic book for that child there, to really kind of encourage ongoing engagement with that child and with their toy, and using that tool to be able to relay emotions and feelings, and communicate in a way that where we're meeting that child exactly where we're at. So also a good example of utilising modern technology these days, and just how much you can do with things like AI, when it's regulated, and how you can utilise things like that to kind of enhance your support that you're giving. So I thought that was a really nice example to share with everyone. And just to kind of highlight, the importance of this to us, and the impact of using those kind of methods, we do kind of make our own efforts to collect impact data on what these methods are actually doing tangibly for our families. So in our last impact report, we had a bit of a taste of that. So 84% of our families saw improvements in their child's mental health and well-being. 85% of families became more engaged in early learning and socialisation with their children. And then 87% of families saw improvements in managing children's behaviour and respecting their rights. So it's something that we actually measure too within our data processes, and making sure that we can actually have a bit more of an insight into how many of our families are engaging on these topics around children's rights and their children's behaviour. So something that we're definitely committed to embedding. So I mentioned part of the value of our work, and how we're able to kind of constantly learn is having those really strong relationships within our sector, and being able to utilise those kind of cross-sector groups that we have. So one of those for us, as I mentioned, is Children in Wales. I'd love to pass you on to Anna so that she can introduce herself properly and her organisation, and hopefully just share really just a snippet of all the amazing inspirational kind of pieces of work and insights that they've shared with us that will hopefully be useful for you all. So I'll pass over to Anna and let you go.
Thanks, Izzy, and yeah, thank you for sharing your insight. And it is amazing to think how AI can do something like that, isn't it, and using it positively. So yeah, really, really pleased to have that as an example. So yeah, my name's Anna Westall, as Izzy said at the start, and I work for Children in Wales. I'm a senior policy officer within the organisation, and my two particular areas of work are early years and parenting and family support. So hence really fits really well with the work of Homestart. Now, because most of you aren't based in Wales, you're not probably going to be aware of our organisation, although you may have heard of us. We are a national representative member organisation for the whole of Wales, and we work with individuals or organisations from across all sectors who are working with children, young people and their families. So it's a wide organisation, Our overall vision, as you can see from this, this extract from our strategy, is building a Wales where all babies, children and young people have all their rights fulfilled. So a huge vision. But what you will notice there is that we've put all babies, children and young people, and Izzy has mentioned a couple of times using babies within that phrase. So babies, children, young people is really important. We're highlighting that babies have specific needs that need to be recognised, and they are slightly different and more unique than just saying children and young people. So our vision reflects this. And our overall mission, as you can see, is campaigning for the full realisation of the UNCRC. We also, as an organisation, have another strand of work called Young Wales, and they do direct consultation with children and young people. They don't do so much with the early years, but I'm going to share some examples of the work that I've done with you. So we go to the next slide. So this is a little summary. Oh, it's not quite showing correctly. Thank you. This is a little summary of what I'm just going to talk about today. I'm first of all going to introduce our newest piece of work, which was launched only a couple of months back in May, and that was our Pledge for Babies in Wales, and I'll talk to that in a moment. Then I'm going to talk through some examples of some consultation work we've done with young children. So this is mainly with 2 to 4-year-olds, and I've got a short video to share with you around that as well. And then I'm going to touch on some resources that we've produced to support babies and young children's rights. You already saw at the start of the presentation the work that Welsh Government have done, and I did pop the link in the chat, so you're welcome to look at those. But in Children in Wales, we've also got lots of resources which you may find useful. And then finally, I will talk about our Parents Connect Wales work, which is particularly focusing on supporting parents to both understand their children's rights and understand the importance that they have in their role in supporting their children's rights, and the importance of them having a voice as well. So it talks to some of the things that were mentioned in the first presentation by Scotland, actually, and there may be some useful resources there which you can use as well. But the first piece of work I'm talking about is the Pledge for Babies in Wales, and you can see on the right-hand side, I'll just go back to the other slide a second, that's it, Izzy. Just you can see the introduction to the pledge. So this piece of work has been developed probably over the last at least a year, maybe longer. It's been co-produced with parents, their babies and professionals across Wales. And the pledge has been developed to highlight the perspective of the baby and focus on their rights and needs in those first 1,000 days of their life, so from preconception to 2 years old. As I said, babies have really unique needs and are more vulnerable than others because they can't advocate for their rights. So this pledge has been developed to ensure their needs are considered. The whole pledge is written from the perspective of the baby. So it's all from the voice of the baby, and you'll see that. And it's split into 3 different sections. So we can go to the next slide now, and you can have a little sample of some of the sections of the pledge. So it's split, like I said, into 3 different sections. The first section in the green there is written about what a baby needs to grow up happy, healthy and safe. So as you can see, we are all different, but we have similar needs for love and care. And there's a few examples there of some of the things that are written in the pledge. And then on the pink section, it particularly focuses on what grown-ups need so they can support their babies. So it's talking to both sides here. So particularly what a grown-up needs. So you can see here, my grown-ups need to feel heard and be able to get support for any difficulties they experience so they can take care of me. So that focuses on what their babies, grown-ups need. And then the final section really focuses on both what the baby and their grown-ups need from the wider community and society around them to help them have that best start in life. And there's a few examples that's on there. Things like communities need to listen to us so that we can have a say in shaping policies and services that affect us. That's only a little taste, so there's a few more statements under each of them. But really we're excited to launch this pledge because it's the start of a journey really, in really highlighting and making everybody aware of the importance of recognising those needs and rights of babies right from the start. So the pledge is being shared widely. As Izzy mentioned, we've got a Minister for Children and Social Care. She came to the launch. She shared it amongst lots of ministers within the Senate. So it was a really kind of high-level document, but also really accessible and usable for parents and anybody working with babies and young children. The 2 pictures there do show some of the work that we did. We worked directly with parents and babies together, and they helped us produce these statements. So there really has been co-produced with them. So although this pledge is written and says babies in Wales, it absolutely can be used across other areas as well. You know, the needs are going to be very, very similar. And at the moment, all we're asking is, like I said, it's the start of a journey. We're asking people to really give a commitment to putting babies' unique needs and voice at the heart of every decision they're making. So that's all we're asking at the moment. And what we're going to work towards now we've produced this pledge is developing and showcasing case study examples of how this pledge has been put into action. So we're really keen. So we work with people like Home Start and other organisations across Wales to gather examples of how this pledge is being used in different areas of work. We're already hearing examples, and it's really exciting to see how some of the statements are being displayed or being used or being written into kind of local policies as well. So it's really exciting that this is kind of a resource that can be used widely and will be used differently in different areas depending on what the needs are. So we will pop a link to that in the chat later on, so you can have a little look at that. But that really helps. We really hope that will help people understand the unique needs of babies and how they can begin to recognise those needs. Another thing that we particularly do when we're working, and we've talked a lot about this already today, is about trying to get that voice of babies into the work that we're doing and understanding what it's like for them. And I think was mentioned, I think Vicky mentioned at the start about being able to hold that baby in mind as well. That's really, really, really important, and something that we are really encouraging everybody to do. So what we're going to do next is give a little opportunity for you to have a go at doing something that we do in Wales, that we use in lots of different ways. I can see someone's put in the chat, absolutely, Scotland has got an infant pledge. We were inspired by them, and we've worked closely with Starcatchers and the team in Scotland who've developed that, and that's definitely inspired our pledge for babies in Wales. So it's really exciting that we were able to launch it as well. So we're going to have a go at a little exercise, an activity. So if you can move to the next one. As I said, this is going to give us a chance to start to think about babies and how we can bring them into the forefront of our mind. So before you do anything else, I want you to think of a young baby under 1 year old in your mind. We don't need to know who they are. We don't need to know how old they are. They could be brand new born. They could be 9 months and starting to crawl. It could be a baby that's doing really well, thriving in a loving family, or it could be a baby that's really struggling maybe and finding life a bit difficult, has some difficult additional needs, or it could be that they're in a difficult family environment. We don't need to know what they are, but I want you to hold that baby in mind. And what we're going to have a go at doing is answering 2 questions, but we want you to answer the question from the baby's perspective. So we want you to kind of get into the baby's mind and think about the really simple questions, how the baby may respond to this question, and answer that. So if you've got a phone with you, you can scan the QR code. It'll take you straight to the 2 questions. If you haven't, you can click on the link in the chat. And if you can't do that, you can type in the little website and the code underneath it. So I'll give you a moment to do that. And once everybody's got onto it, I can share my screen, and I'll see we can see some of they're all anonymous, by the way. Whatever you put into this, it's I can see that it's already some answers coming in, so somebody's already got into it. So whatever you put in will come up on a screen. I'm going to share that in a moment. So we want you to think about, how would the baby answer this question? How would they respond if they could? If you're having any problems, please unmute or put in the chat and we'll help you get onto it. So hopefully you can see the answers as they come up. They're moving around as people are putting things in. But that first question we're asking is, yeah, what are you enjoying in your life at the moment? So we want you to kind of think about, yeah, from the baby's point of view, what they're enjoying in their life at the moment. And as with any word cloud, the bigger the word, it means the more people have written that word. So we've got lots of lovely cuddles, play, a full tummy, attention from mum and dad. Yeah, looking at mum's face, smiles from mummy, the smell of mum, yummy milk. Lovely. Comfy bed for sleep right now. Okay, second question, then you can still, if you haven't answered that, you can carry on. I'll just move to the second question. You'll all hopefully started to answer this. So the second question is slightly different. So we're going to ask, hold your baby in mind still. What do you think that baby would say? What would you like to change in your life at the moment? So not to be left in the cot, my mum to be happy, eye contact, meeting other babies, my mum would hold me more. Yeah, everyone's really good. Yeah, getting into that mind frame of what a baby may say. A slightly harder question, but yeah, I'll give you a moment to have a go at responding to that. Yeah, more cuddles. Yeah, lots about it. Yeah, being kept close, isn't it? And being held. So as you can continue to do it, but just as an example, so this is something we don't obviously always use those same questions, but sometimes what we do is give an opportunity, if we're doing a piece of work, to stop and think about it from the baby's perspective. So we may ask a question, so what would this be like for the baby? How would they think about it? How would they respond to it? And then that isn't directly the voice of the baby, but what it does do is bring the voice of the baby into a room, into a conversation, and it gives everybody a moment to stop and think, okay, what is it like for them? And sometimes just that opportunity to stop and think really does help change your perspective. So this is something which could be used in team meetings or just in a really relaxed home situation. Okay, let's think about what this like for my baby, or what they would be thinking or experiencing, or what they may say if they could say something in this situation. So we've used it a number of times. We've even used it to respond to formal consultations that Welsh Government do. So we had a group of professionals that came together, and we took a formal consultation, and we drew out questions which could be thought about from the baby's point of view, and we asked a range of professionals who were working with young babies to respond to them, and we submitted a baby voice response to a consultation. So a really good way. So we thought it'd be nice to just do a little exercise. What I will do is save those and pass them on to Vicky so she can circulate them if they're useful and you want to look at them in a little bit more detail. I'll stop sharing now so you can bring it back up. Izzy. Brilliant. That's great to hear, Vicky. Something just as simple as that, isn't it? Being able to just reflect on it. But I think what we're saying is we can even use that in more formal ways as well, and in meetings and decisions that are being made. So it's a great example. Okay, so I'm just going to share with you a few things that we've done with consultation with young children. Some of this may be really familiar to you as well, but just an example of the work that we've been doing. So let me just change my screen so I can. So in Children in Wales, we recognise the importance of involving babies and young children in any consultation that's happening. And sometimes Welsh Government come to us and say, can you help us? We want to engage with young children. We want your support to develop some resources on how to do that. So this is an example of some of the work that we've done. just a few pictures. So when we're engaging with young children, we're making sure we're doing it in, and I think this has been said, meaningful and appropriate ways. You can't just sit them in a circle and start asking big questions. That doesn't work for them. We need to make it real to them. So we often use our methods based on the mosaic approach. You may have heard that as well. So getting young children to take photos, doing picture-based activities, children doing drawings for us. And these are some of the examples that you can see here. It means we can start to kind of build up an image of how the child views the world, how they view their play space, or whatever we're kind of consulting on. So these pictures are taken from a piece of work that Welsh Government were doing around their childcare settings. So this is where this is. So a child is showing us different spaces within their childcare setting that they like and enjoy and why they like them. And the picture, it says, yeah, getting messy with paint. That was one of the things that they'd enjoy doing in their setting. And the next slide also gives some more pictures and examples of work that we've done. So this is another one that we've done with young children where they've been able to talk about their play spaces. So Welsh Government were doing a play review, and they wanted to gather views from young children about what they enjoy playing with, both inside and outside play. And you can see some lovely abstract pictures of how young children view their play spaces, and you can see the drawings as well. Now, one thing to mention here is that the drawings are fantastic, but they aren't, if I was to take those and try and work out what they mean, I think I would struggle. I mean, I don't know if anybody wants to have a go. Sometimes I give people the chance to try and interpret these for us. If anybody feels brave enough wants to pop in the chat what they think each of these pictures and the drawings are trying to tell us. It's not always easy. I mean, one of them's on here slightly easier, but if anybody wants to have a go at guessing what they're trying to say, feel free to. But what I really is, we make sure we work really closely with the early years practitioners, because they're the ones that know these children best. So we ask the practitioners to talk to the children, get the children to point and show them things so they can interpret these drawings for us, because that's really helpful, really important, because on our own we wouldn't be able to work that out. So that relationship with the early years practitioners is really, really important. And then the next slide here is sometimes Welsh Government put consultations out that aren't aimed at children. They haven't asked for children's views on it, especially young children, but we've recognised that actually, no, children have a right to have their voice heard and be involved. So we're going to find a way to ensure that they do have this opportunity. And this is a prime example. In Wales, had a big consultation around the 20-mile-per-hour speed limit a few years ago, quite a controversial consultation. But we recognised that we wanted to get young children's views on this. So we took the main consultation, simplified it, made it relevant, and we used a range of play-based activities and role play to pull out some of the children's views on this and feed that back to Welsh Government. So we just got a really short 1.5 minute video to show you about how this was done in one of the childcare settings.
Can you remember what the signs mean? What do we learn about?
Go slow.
What does it mean?
20. Slow.
Do you remember what it means?
Whoa. This sign is slow, okay?
Thank you. Yes, that's just a short video, and there's plenty more videos of different consultations we've done on our website, so I will pop that in at the end. So just to finish, I'm just going to talk to you about our Parents Connect Wales work. So a few years ago, we secured some funding for Welsh Government after we recognised there was a real gap in empowering parents and carers to both be aware of children's rights and to be able to support their children's rights and to have a voice themselves. So that's kind of where the project came about, because we know, and I think it's already been mentioned as well, that lots of parents still don't know about children's rights. Although there's lots of resources out there, they're not aware, and they're not aware of the important role that they have to play. So Parents Connect Wales was set up particularly to do this. So we've developed an online hub which has loads of resources. So I'm going to really encourage you to go on there. There's parent stories and journeys, videos, voice notes. We've got as you can see here on the right, infographics. We've done a number of consultations with parents across Wales, and then we summarise the results and we upload these onto the hub so parents can see, other organisations can see what parents are saying on different topical areas. We've also developed a number of co-produced resources, which are on the next slide. Some examples of those. So we've worked with parents. So these are all been co-produced. So and they're written in accessible languages. Parents have given us all these ideas. We've helped them put them together, but absolutely they've led on these. So the poster on the left-hand side is what talking about why parents should have a voice and be involved in decisions. So a really simple resource, but actually really powerful to help parents understand their important role that they have to play and why they need to be involved. And then on the right-hand side, this is just a couple of extracts out of a fantastic leaflet that we've developed with parents. And I think this would be really helpful, especially from what we've heard today, about how parents can support children's rights, written in a really accessible language, telling them how they can support it, and also goes in, does a little summary about what children's rights are. So really another useful resource that is, again, have been developed in Wales, but absolutely apply to any parents. It can be used. So encourage you to download them, have a look at our online hub. There's absolutely loads and loads of information on there to really support parents to know how to support their children and also how to understand children's rights and have a voice themselves. So then we're just going to touch on the value of collaboration. And as he's already mentioned, we work really closely together in Wales. We are a smaller country, so I suppose we have that benefit. But as a group, we do a number of things collaboratively to be able to to work together, to allow us to have a collective voice and to share learning with each other. We have an early years action group, which Children in Wales run and Home Start are part of, as well as a number of other charities and organisations in Wales. We share good practice. We also have a children's rights in early years network, which really promotes the rights of our youngest children. And we have conferences and events to let other people in Wales know about that work. And really, collectively, we can advocate for change. So we've done pieces of work around child poverty, the cost of living, the first 1,000 days, perinatal mental health, parent and child well-being. And we've really campaigned for certain things or pushed for different things to happen. And by working together, we really can helpfully move things forward and really support babies and young children. Children in Wales also have a quarterly magazine where we showcase lots and lots of organisations, and there's a picture there, just one of the front covers of that. Well, I'll hand back to Izzy, who's just going to end the presentation for us.
Thanks, Anna. I think hopefully it's been helpful to see just the sheer amount of work that Children in Wales do. They spearhead so much project and insight, and it's great for us to, at least to be able to utilise their expertise and those resources. They're really helpful to us. So hopefully they'll be helpful for you in your own branches. And just to emphasise that obviously we're in Wales running up to a Senedd election in May, and I know that Scotland are in a similar position running up to elections. And so for us, having those spaces for collective voice, shared learning and actually collective influencing ahead of things like that has been really, really powerful. Being able to know and strengthen the messages that we all share around children's rights and what progress needs to be made. So it's particularly valuable for that. So just to kind of, I would absolutely encourage others to know kind of what forums are available in your own kind of either local or national areas, and to make sure that you're vocal in those as much as you can, because it's definitely a priority for us, and we've definitely been benefiting from that. So just to summarize kind of what we've spoken about today, and in some kind of general advice to you all, to be creative, first of all, so using those imaginative techniques to engage young children and children in general. So those examples that Anna have shared, in those interactive sessions, those drawings, and being able to utilize those techniques to engage with children has been really kind of a game changer for us. Being flexible as well, so avoiding that one-size-fits-all approach, knowing that, as you all know, children with emerging needs, for example, what's something that's going to work for one child isn't going to work for another, and being able to go and learn about that family and what's going to work best for them on a really kind of personal basis. Being inclusive, so where possible for staff volunteers to have that cultural competency, where available, having the learning behind that. Again, families are going to look very different from one another, and some of that is going to come into how you frame the engagement with children in the wider family, making sure that's culturally competent and embedding co-production into what you do. Again, exactly as Anna, that the example that Anna gave, that government consultation didn't require those technically those voices of children, but taking it upon yourselves to make sure that you're really taking a step back to think, can we include the voices of children in what we do here? And then being consistent, so embedding those approaches into your everyday, as opposed to maybe doing activities that can be seen as those tick box exercises. So doing one engagement session, maybe not kind of revisiting that issue again with the family, but embedding it into your everyday approach where it's possible, and setting those standards. So again, maybe it's in your data collection. Are you kind of monitoring and tracking the impact of your methods and kind of your interventions around children's rights and empowerment of rights, so that you're able to know what you need to change and what's working. So we hope that that's been useful for you today. We're both really happy for you all to contact us independently. I know, really sorry, we ran over time a bit, I think, with our slot, but if there are any questions, we'd be happy to answer them now. If not, here's our contact details on the screen. We can share them in the chat too as well. But thank you so much for listening to us. I hope that's been useful, and just great to hear from everyone else as well, and the brilliant projects that are going on. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Izzy and Anna. Gosh, so much to think about there, isn't there? And we've got exactly 4 minutes to reflect as a group or ask any questions. If you do need to go, if you need to be somewhere at 12:30, then please do go when you need to. But if anyone has any reflections or questions or thoughts that they'd like to ask any of the presenters, or to share anything that you're doing in your own Home Start, please do raise a hand, or put your question in the chat. That's also fine. We got any? I can't see any hands up. We're slightly. I think from a personal point of view, and as I said before, from being in England and not in the nations where there's been so much more work done in this, that there's a lot for us to think about, and for local Home Starts in England, and you've paved the way because you've done a lot of the hard work, both Scotland and Wales. I really like the idea of the careers and how in Home Start we can think about embedding them into our better embed them into our policy and practice. Yeah, I think we'll probably end there. I'd like to say a particular thanks to Vicky, who did all the organising for this webinar and putting it all together. And I know this is an area that you're particularly keen to continue developing for the for the network. So look forward to that. As said, we will share everything, all the resources. We'll put them into one place on At Home and share that with you. And if you do have any questions, Izzy as kindly and Anna have said, please do contact them directly. And many thanks to Wigtownshire as well for an also brilliant presentation. And I think we can all leave this with lots of new knowledge, and I would imagine probably quite a lot of actions. So thank you so much. Our August session, where we've actually decided to cancel it. So if you'd already signed up for that, you will get a cancellation. But so our next one will be September the 17th, and that's going to be led by Kieran Anders, who's currently on a secondment to Home Start UK to talk about Dad Matters and the future development of that as Dad Matters moves into being a part of Home Start UK. So if you can, please do join us for that. I think that's it. Thanks everyone so much. Such an interesting session, and have a great summer.